welcome along to a beautiful sunny day here at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. We're about to bring to you round 8 of the 2024 Sevens Racing UK Championship, and whereas usually we would see the likes of the 420R class race separately to the 310Rs and the 270s, which would combine their grids together, for this weekend, because we can accommodate so many cars on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, everybody is out there together. So 50 cars took to qualifying yesterday, and therefore we'll see the 420s and the 310s with the odd little 270 potentially in there, all starting to do battle around this fantastic 3.66 mile circuit. For the 410Rs, all of the previous race winners, they only had 6 races. 7 were scheduled, but one at Donington Park didn't take place because of inclement weather. But 6 race wins have been shared between Lee Wiggins, who's taken 3, and Phil Jenkins, who's taken 3. But neither of those drivers are on the entry list for this weekend, so there will be a new driver that will claim a win in the 420s. However, in the 310s, David Yates and James Wingfield have taken a couple of wins apiece. Jamie Winrow, Caroline Everett have taken a single win apiece, and each one of those drivers for the 310s is on the first 3 rows of their respective grid. So 22 cars in the 420s, which means we've got 28 in the 310s. So it's going to be a busy old race, this one. First time I've seen them this year as well. So good to catch up with the Macmillan 7 Racing Series Championship, which will conclude its season next time it's out on circuit, 7th of September at Alton Park, for the couple of races up there where the cars will go back to their usual format of the 420s will have their own grid, and then the 310s with the odd 270 that we see in there, they will have their separate grid. And if you're wondering, if you're not quite familiar with what they are, we'll bring you through all of that. Anthony Barnes and Luke Bennett sit there on the front row of the grid because it's a rolling start. Mark Stansfield and Lewis Tootle in row number 2, Ian Cowley and Gary Tootle on row number 3, with Mark Farmer, former British GT racer Matt Drew, and Adam White and Rob Watts is the top 10 in the 420s. For the 310s, David Yates and James Wingfield, Paul Sethe and Harry Eyre, Caroline Everett and Jamie Winrow at the front 3 rows in the 310s. So I think the safety car is already peeling its way in towards the pit lane, which means we are about to get this race underway. Anthony Barnes in the Team Parker Racing prepared Dayglow orange machine sitting there on pole position. Luke Bennett in the black car with the blue flashes that sits alongside Mark Stanfield with the green and the yellow, alongside the light green and black of Lewis Tootle. And row 3 of the grid, it's yellow, silver and black for Ian Cowley, alongside the red and black car of Gary Tootle, the second member of the Tootle family. Pole position is on the right-hand side of the circuit on the run up towards Copse Corner. Lights are on the gantry, 30 minutes are on the clock, and we're about to get round 8 of the championship underway here at Silverstone. The 410Rs will go off, the 310s will go off a little bit later on, and as they head up towards Copse Corner for the first time, Anthony Barnes looks as though he's got the jump on everybody else as they turn their way up towards Copse, and it is going to be Mark Stansfield that slots himself through into second position. Gary Tootle is looking to try and get third away from Luke Bennett, and I think he's made it stick as well. The lighter green car of Lewis Tootle, I think, was through there into third. So the 420s head up towards Maggots and Beckett's for the first time. The 310s just get going now over the start-finish line. About 20-30 seconds later is when they get going. So we've got 2 races for the price of 1, but everybody in the 420s is safely through the first couple of corners. Tom Greasel with a bit of a wiggle on there as he was sitting close on the coattails of Matt Reeve, but typical Caterham fashion, it's all about making sure you're in the lead pack come the final few moments of the race. So lots of slipstreaming, there'll be lots of changes of position, and there should be some fantastically close racing, as is always the case there. Tim Heyman-Joyce further back side by side, but for the lead of the race, Anthony Barnes, is he going to come under pressure from Mark Stansfield? No, not this time, in towards Club. So the man from pole position, 3 podiums so far this year, still continues to lead the way in the Team Parker prepared car. Anthony, who's been a long time Caterham racer and has always been towards the sharp end, but he's got Mark Stansfield with him, and as they head along the international pit straight, is Mark Stansfield going to go for the lead? He is, and he goes up the inside as they head in towards Abbey, but he can't quite make it stick. He's back into second place, but now coming under attack from Lewis Tootle, and in typical Caterham fashion, you look to try and gain a place. In the case of Mark Stansfield, he actually lost 2. The 310Rs are just heading on the international pit straight. We'll pick out as to who's leading that in a few moments. We go back to the 420Rs. Mark Stansfield looking to try and reassert himself back into second place if he can. He's still there in third currently. Along the straight, you can see them all weaving from one side to the other to try and break the tow, but Anthony Barnes isn't going to come under huge amounts of pressure this time. 310s, it's David Yates that's out front and leading the way. That's Harry Eyre that's there in second place. And Paul Sethi is there in third place, but coming under attack from the red car with the day-glow flashes to it. So looking to try and squeeze their way through, but couldn't quite manage to do so. Back to the sharp end, Luke Bennett there, coming under pressure from Ian Cowley, as they're still fighting over who wants to be 6th and 7th at the moment. Anthony Barnes leads the first lap. Mark Stansfield in second place, was just 0.5 of a second behind. Then it's the Tootle family, Gary from Lewis, that are there 3rd and 4th respectively. And then 5th place over the start-finish line was going to be Matt Drew, who was there in 5th place. His is the almost spearmint-coloured car, isn't it? So Luke Bennett, who qualified on the front row of the grid, down to the bottom of the top 6 at the moment. For the 310Rs, hitting the front there is Harry Eyre, who has picked up the lead of the race from David Yates. Harry has yet to be a race winner in the 310 so far this year. David Yates has got a couple of wins under his belt. And is that Sam May that's 3rd in the 310s? Going to try and pick up on that. David Yates slipstreams his way up the inside at Maggots and Beckett. Somebody runs very wide and has to take onto the run-off tarmac. Will Rejoy, but that's going to drop that car down through the order. Everybody, I think, has safely completed the first lap of the race, and that has just allowed now the front 2 in the 310Rs to break away a little bit. So down the hanger stroke they'll go. David Yates and Harry Eyre working together at this stage. Up towards the braking area for Stowe Corner. James Wingfield in almost looks red on the television screen, but it's actually almost a crunchy wrapper colour. It's a golden colour, his car, James Wingfield. He's there in 3rd place, but is under huge pressure from the next car through, which is that Oliver Smith, who's made good progress. I think it might be possibly Oliver Smith, one of the few cars that I didn't manage to identify the colour of prior to the race getting underway, but it certainly looks as though Oliver Smith has made good progress, if that's the case, because he started on something like the 5th or 6th row of the grid for the 310Rs. So the 310Rs powered by 1600cc engines. For the 420s, then it's a 2-litre engine that they have, 175 brake horsepower, and for most of them it will be the Sadab 6-speed sequential gearbox that will have. There's a problem, and that is a big blow up, I'm afraid. Caroline Everett has disappeared in a huge cloud of smoke, and that looks more than terminal, doesn't it, for Caroline Everett? That also may well have deposited oil onto that part of the circuit. Now Caroline, very experienced driver, did the right thing as soon as she realised there was a problem, got the car out of harm's way. It's back behind the barriers and therefore won't even need localised yellow flags to cover it. But look at the cloud of smoke that she's left. The big question is, has she left any fluid on the track? For the overall lead of the race, though, Anthony Barnes still having to work overtime to try and keep Mark Stansfield at bay. This is the 410Rs that are at the front, and right, that is without question going to be a red flag, I would have thought, because we've got a Caterham in the middle of the circuit minus a wheel. We've got debris everywhere. We've got the wheel itself, which has departed company with the car trundling its way in an opposite direction, and with marshals on hand, there's 3 cars actually. There's one in the gravel trap, there's one in the middle of the circuit. Well, the wheel didn't part company, it was the tyre that parted company because the rim got smashed. And then we've also got another car that's got tangled up, which is Michael O'Reilly. So that's in the 310s where that has all happened. Couldn't quite identify who all of them are, but at the moment we are still under racing conditions. I don't think the safety car's been scrambled as yet even, and we'll try and pick up on who that was. So the 310s still continuing. James Wingfield looking to try and thread the needle here, maybe take up the lead of the 310s. David Yates has other ideas about that as they head up towards Stowe Corner. So it's David Yates that's still going to be leading the 310s from James Wingfield and Harry Eyre, who's dropped to 3rd in the 310s at the moment. So it's a trio for the lead of 310s. It may well soon be a quartet as well. Marshall's, as ever, doing a brilliant job of picking up errant bits of debris strewn around the circuit, but we've still got that car slap bang in the middle of the track at the moment. Now, Caterhams are light cars, but when it's only on 3 wheels, there's only so much that Marshals can do under localised yellows, and therefore, quite understandably so, safety car comes out. So that is going to bunch everybody up once more. So I'm just trying to pick up the leading 310 at the moment. We mentioned was David Yates as he came over the start-finish line. Well, he is 23rd position at the moment, the leading 310 that we've got in the field. So it's David Yates from Harry Eyre, from James Wingfield, from not Oliver Smith, from Mark Roberts it would have been at the wheel of the number 33 car, so he was the car that was making good progress. So Anthony Barnes leading the way overall. So he's yet to be a race winner in the 420s so far this year. He's had a couple of thirds, he's had a second last time out actually at Donington Park. He's had a couple of thirds, he's had a fourth, he's had a couple of fifths as well, but hasn't as yet had the race wins. But in the absence of Lee Wiggins and Phil Jenkins, who aren't on the entry list for this weekend, it gives somebody else the opportunity to step up and grab a win. Second in the race is Mark Stansfield, who has had a couple of seconds, a third, a fourth and a fifth so far this season. And third in the race at the moment, at least it was when the safety car came out, was Lewis Tootill, who his best result was last time out at Donington Park, where he grabbed a fourth place. He's been knocking on the door of top sixes on a couple of occasions, but fourth place at Donington Park, his only top six finish, his best finish of the season so far. That's the car that's fourth in the race. So Marshall's doing a job to try and clear up the incident. One good thing is that all the drivers are out of the car, and very quickly the car that was stricken in the middle of the circuit, Michael O'Reilly's car, we saw got tangled up. Who else was tangled up and didn't make it through at the end of that particular lap? Well, we know Caroline Everett was one that pulled off the circuit, but other cars that haven't reappeared out of that sector. Car number 67, which was Doug Christie, did not reappear. Can't quite see the number. Doug Christie's car is black, and that car that's sitting in the middle of the circuit is black, so I think he's probably the one that's slap bang in the middle of the circuit. Another car that didn't come through at the end of the lap was number 50, Greg Hyatt, and then there was a white car that was in the gravel trap as well, wasn't there? So I think that probably may well have been Greg Hyatt's car, just looking white on the screen, where it's actually a light grey car. So I think those are the cars that have been tangled up in it. Michael O'Reilly, Doug Christie and Greg Hyatt are the three cars that unfortunately all came together down there. And of course Caroline Everett, we know that her car expired in a huge cloud of smoke as she came out of the loop, I think it was, but she parked the car very sensibly through a gap in the wall at Aintree Corner, and that didn't require even any localised yellows to be shown, but there might be change of surface flag shown down there, which is the yellow and red striped flag. There's our 310R leader, David Yates, already twice a race winner so far this year. He took a win in the second round of the championship at Snetterton on the 300 circuit. He also took a win on the Brands Grand Prix circuit as well. That was when these cars, if memory served me correctly, did they support the GT World Challenge Europe down at Brands Hatch, or was that the previous year? But he leads the way. The red car with the yellow flashes to it, James Wingfield, is second in the 310Rs. As we say, third in the 310Rs. When we look down through the order, third in the 310s is Harry Eyre, and fourth in the 310s is the blue machine, which is Mark Roberts. So that's the top four in the 310s at the moment. The previous year they supported the GT World Challenge Europe. So David Yates, James Wingfield, Harry Eyre, then Mark Roberts is the next of the cars in 310Rs. That's going to be Paul Setti, isn't it? That is the next of those, I think. Scroll back through. Yes, it is. It is Macmillan Motorsport car. So this is the Dayglow green car, with the white and the black flashes to it. So more clearing up still being done. Caterham wheel arches being collected by the marshals to get them out of harm's way. Recovery crew on the scene to scoop up the cars that are stricken there. So it's probably going to be another lap or two yet before we get this race underway. And whilst all of that is happening, of course, the clock is still continuing to tick. So of the scheduled 30 minutes, we've got 18 minutes and a bit of change remaining for this 8th race of the season. So we started the season at Snetterton on the 300 circuit, then went to Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit. It was Donington Park National last time out, before we then come to Silverstone and the Grand Prix circuit here, which looks absolutely fabulous in the build-up to MotoGP that will be here in a few weeks' time. And then it's up to Cheshire, Alton Park International Circuit. The way the championship works is in each of the respective classes, it's 50 points for a race win, 47 for second, 45 for third, and there on it diminishes all the way down to 2 points if you're 46th. And from 47th onwards, it's a single point. There's an extra point for the fastest lap as well, but there's also points for qualifying. Not many. If you qualify on pole position in your respective class, it's 3 points. If you're second, it's 2. If you're third, it's 1. And the totals rounds for all those held, less 2, determine the final championship scores. So there are dropped scores to be taken into account. So for the likes of the unfortunate Doug Christie, whose car's being winched away at the moment, this, without question, will be a dropped round for him. And also, you can see there's a chunk of work to be done back in the workshop to get his car repaired. Doug Christie being run by CTS Motorsport. Michael O'Reilly, who got tangled up, run by Macmillan Motorsports. That's Andy Macmillan, the man behind the series. And the other car that went missing was definitely Greg Hyatt. His is a LFP Motorsport prepared car. So a lot of cars are prepared by Macmillan Motorsport, but you don't have to. So Anthony Barnes, who leads overall in the 420s and is the first of the cars behind the safety car. Team Parker Racing, very, very experienced team, not just prepping Caterhams, but of course hugely associated with Porsches, Porsche Carrera Cup GB. Of course, they've also prepared cars and won in the likes of the British GT Championship with the Bentley a few years ago. So a very, very experienced team. So it's Team Parker Racing from Macmillan Motorsport, Macmillan Motorsport, Macmillan Motorsport, and Macmillan Motorsport, the top 5 at the moment. Marshall's just clearing up the fluids that have been deposited down there at Luffield Corner. The cars are pretty much out of harm's way, and we might be able to go green flag racing at the end of this one, which is good news because we've still got half of the race to go. So where are the cars currently? They're just coming onto the Wellington Straight, so it'll be around here where the safety car would extinguish its lights, but until that recovery truck is safely in the pit lane and has made the radio call to race control that they're clear of track, and the marshals have reported in that they are back in position, the lights will remain on the safety car. As soon as race control receive those notifications from the various points and officials, yep, then they'll notify the safety car, off go the lights, which means we're ready to go racing at the end of this lap. So by the time the cars come over the start finish line, we're still going to have, yeah, only just under half of the 30 minutes to go. Again, it will be a rolling start, and again, I think what we'll see is the 310Rs on this restart will hang back. They won't sit right on the coattails of the front runners of the 420s. They will hang back a little bit, and that's exactly what David Yates is doing. You see the 420s just going through shot now in the background of the 310, so a bit like the original start. There will be a bit of a gap between them all, and Anthony Barnes has already decided to go for it. Very early restart for him. He was just coming round through Brooklands and the entrance to Luffield when he got on it, and that has been a great restart. Caught napping slightly as Mark Stansfield, who's still there in second place, will still pick up the toe from the race leader, but it was a really good restart and a very intelligent one from Anthony Barnes, who leads the way from Mark Stansfield. Lewis Tootle is there in third place. David Yates for the 310Rs is about to get things underway as he heads out of Luffield. He's got James Wingfield behind him, and then a dark green car with a yellow stripe over the centre of it in the hands of Harry Eyre. So David Yates gets things going. He's a very busy man, races not just in this championship but other championships, and that's the great thing about a Caterham. There are so many places that you can race them. He's under pressure though for the lead of the 310Rs to help towards Copse. He can't make it stick. The 420s in the meantime are working their way up towards Stowe Corner, with Lewis Tootle trying to get up the inside of Mark Stanfield to try and steal second place away. Gary Tootle's coming under pressure and is going to lose out there as Luke Bennett goes through. It's not the only car that managed to squeeze its way through there as well, because is that going to be Gary Tootle trying to re-attack again? It might be, you know, up towards the braking area for Club. Couldn't quite make it stick there. And the car that he's trying to do battle with, is that the 77 of Rob Watts? I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, because it's got the Dayglow flashes to it, the black car. So it is, yeah, Rob Watts that's made good progress from the grid, qualified in 10th place, but is now, or was at the start of this lap, up into 5th position. Whereas for the man who started on the front row of the grid, Luke Bennett, he sort of tumbled through the order rather. Back to the 310Rs, and now it's James Wingfield that's picked up the lead of the race. A move up the inside heading in towards Club on David Yates allows him to go through, but of course David Yates, all he's going to do now in typical Caterham fashion is he'll sit in the slipstream down the international straight, the international pit straight, the Lewis Hamilton straight, and try and reassert himself back in the lead. Here comes David Yates. Look, said it would happen. Harry Ayre decides to follow through as well. So James Wingfield might find himself down into third. No, it's just second at the moment as he clips the apex round through Abbey up towards Farm. So 4 fighting for the lead of the 310Rs, being headed by David Yates currently. Back to the 420s. And there was Rob Watts running a little bit wide and pulling off the circuit there. Was that 63 or 83? It'd be 63. Scott Parker, who has stopped. And where has he stopped? He has stopped at the entrance to the international pits by the look of things. So the marshals should be able to shove him out of harm's way. 12 minutes to go. Anthony Barnes over the start-finish line. 6 laps completed. 5/10 of a second he leads Mark Stansfield by for the overall lead of the race. And the 420s, remember, we don't have any of the previous winners this season for the 420s on the entry list for this weekend. Lewis Tootle still there in third position, and his front three have broken away quite well now, actually, from Gary Tootle, who I think has reasserted himself back in 4th place. 5th at the moment is going to be Rob Watts, and it is going to be Ben Winrow that is next up. But the lead 3 really have broken the toe, so all of those cars in the background have to work together now. If they don't work together, they are not going to catch the lead trio. If they do work together, they stand half a chance in 11.5 minutes. So up towards Stowe, lap number 7. Anthony Barnes still continuing to lead. Mark Stansfield sitting with him. Now, it may well be that Mark Stansfield at the moment is quite happy just to sit and wait for the opportunity. If they start to squabble for first, second and third, the pack behind will catch, but if they just bide their time, tow each other around the circuit, you know, you go from second, you'll pick up the lead, but you know that the next corner, someone else is going to tow back off you, so you'll drop down to second or to third, and by working together, towing each other around the track, that's what makes the difference. And towing himself to the lead of the 310Rs in the meantime is Harry Ayre. So number 155, Harry Ayre picks up the lead. David Yates in second place. The red and Dayglow car of James Wingfield is down into third. Still Marks Roberts that sits there 4th, but Harry Ayre I think is done with the lead for the moment, is he? Yeah, he lets David Yates have it back, does he? No, not quite. David Yates side by side with James Wingfield for second and third in the 310s as they turn their way through the corner. So it's Harry Ayre that leads the 310s, and with 3 wins in the 310s, David Yates is in second. 2 wins in the 310s, David Yates is in second, and also a man who's had 2 wins, James Wingfield, is there in third. Back to the overall leaders, up towards Brooklands they go. Anthony Barnes still from Mark Stansfield, and then Lewis Tootle. Mark Stansfield, I thought, was going to try and prise the door open a little bit there, but couldn't quite do so just as yet, or is intent and quite content to sit there in second currently, as they come through now to chalk lap number 7 into the book. The fastest lap of the race, by the way, just to pick up on that, has gone to Luke Bennett. So he started on the front row of the grid, has dropped to 7th, but has set the fastest lap, 2 minutes 21.894 from him. So potentially the extra championship point heading in his direction as things stand. So for the lead of the race, Mark Stansfield uses the tow coming out of Cops Corner, side by side through the first part of Beckett. Mark Stansfield picks up the lead of the race. Anthony Barnes drops down into second. He's still got Lewis Tootle breathing down his neck though in third place. All of these cars running on the same controlled Toyo R888 are treaded tyres, so it's not a slick tyre that they run, and Anthony Barnes is going to tow himself back into the lead of the race, and can Lewis Tootle move through into second and ahead of Mark Stansfield. Look at the squabbling going on in the background as they're all weaving around to try and work out who wants to be 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. Lewis Bennett is in that pack. Also in that pack is Rob Watts. We've got Gary Tootle in that little pack as well. Couldn't quite pick out who the other car was that was there as well. So 3 for the lead. The squabbling for 4th is going to slow them up, which is going to mean that with 8 minutes of this race still to go, I'm less sure that they're going to catch each other. The other car that's in that pack is Ben Winrow, isn't it? So he's just managed to squeeze his way through and past Luke Bennett, front row starter. And now that means that Bennett is going to be down, back down into 7th place again, I think. So 310Rs. Back to that, they're up at the top section of the circuit, and well, now it's 5 for the lead of the 310Rs by the look of things. It is David Yates that leads Harry Eyre. Then it is going to be Mark Roberts. James Wingfield is next up, and Paul Setti has now managed to join in on the fun as well. So it's 5 cars for the lead of the 310Rs as they turn their way through Club Corner. They're on lap number 7 as well at the moment, or 7 laps completed on lap number 8. And the Dayglow green car of Paul Setti has now caught them as they've been busy squabbling with each other. They've not been working together as much as they should, and all of a sudden extra car joins the pack, and if they squabble more, which will happen, inevitably that will happen as the race wears on and we get closer to the end of the race, there'll be more squabbling going on, more jockeying for position. And don't rule out the fact that car number 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 could all join this train of 5 for the lead of the 310s currently. So the 1600 Sigma engine machines, manual gearbox, turn their way out of the loop up towards Aintree Corner with Harry Eyre, the first of the 310s we've got in the order. Who would be the next of the 310s? Who's sitting as 6th place in the 310s and potentially would then join the fun? I think that would probably be number 36, would it? Which would be Rob Good if he's still there. We'll have to wait and see if he gets there even. For the 420s though, it's still just 3 for the lead, and they'll shortly be coming through to conclude a further lap. So Anthony Barnes leading the way along the Hanger Straight up towards Stowe Corner. Mark Stansfield and Lewis Tootle nearly going to make it 3 wide this time as they head up towards Stowe Corner, and Mark Stansfield picks up the lead of the race. Lewis Tootle goes through to 2nd, and Anthony Barnes, in typical Caterham fashion, was leading at one end of the Hanger Straight. He's down to 3rd by the time they get to the opposite end of it, up towards Club. Stansfield still leads. Tootle just makes sure that he covers off any move that's coming from Anthony Barnes. 6.5 minutes to go. The squabbling getting ever more intense now. Anthony Barnes down into 3rd. Bit of a gap back before we see the 4th place car come through. And that's Rob Watts, I think, that's there in 4th place. But Lewis Tootle now looking for the lead of the race. And again, we're going to be 3 wide this time, heading up towards Abbey. So who's going to come out in the lead? Anthony Barnes came out in the lead, almost ran wide coming out of Abbey. Is he going to hang on to it as they head round through Farm? Yes, he is. Can he hang on to it into the braking area for Village? Yes, he can, because Mark Stansfield throws one up the inside of Lewis Tootle and goes back into 2nd place. So through Village, up to the loop. Barnes from Stansfield, from the first member of the Tootle family. Where's the second member of the Tootle family? Down in 5th at the moment, which is Gary Tootle. So, and then for the 310Rs, we've still got 5 for the lead, and it's David Yates that's back into the lead of that. But the cars that are currently 6th, 7th and 8th in the 310Rs are slowly catching. So keep an eye out, Paul Setti, who's sitting there in 5th place in the Dayglow green car, because the squabbling that you're all doing for the first 5 positions in 310s does mean that you're getting caught at this stage. 5 minutes plus a bit of change to go. Anthony Barnes, by the look of things, is just going to keep his nose ahead and lead the completion of lap number 9 this time through as they come round through Copse Corner. But leading, it's come round through Woodcut Corner, I should say, but leading at Woodcut doesn't guarantee you'll lead when you get to Copse. And does he? Yes, he does. But he's got Mark Stansfield right with him, and Mark will no doubt jink out of the slipstream and try and get the run as they head up towards Maggots. That's exactly what he does. Goes to the right-hand side of the circuit. Lewis Tootle tries to follow him through up towards Maggots and Beckett's. And side by side through the first part of Beckett's, Mark Stansfield tries to pick up the lead of the race. Anthony Barnes is not buying into that at the moment, so just about hangs on to it. Lewis Tootle sitting as the third of those cars. And are they getting caught by the cars behind? Yes. By 0.2 of a second last time through. The car in 4th place was catching, which is Rob Watts. He's busy on his own low, weaving around from one way to the other with the black car with the Dayglow rollover hoop to try and keep Gary Tootle at bay. Luke Bennett tries up the inside, and is he going to go through into 4th place? Yes, he does. But to driver's left is Gary Tootle, side by side round through Stowe Corner. Back to the lead 3 for the 410Rs, and it is going to be Lewis Tootle that briefly leads, but blends out of the throttle, and I think allowed Anthony Barnes to go back through there. He doesn't want to lead just as yet. 4 minutes to go. Plenty of time to work out where you need to be by the final corner, really, because sometimes the sprint to the line coming out of Luffield will decide the race in Caterham's here at Silverstone. Luke Bennett in 4th, being kept very busy. Gary Tootle, I think, might be back through to 4th place by the time they head towards Abbey. Yes, he is. Then Rob Watts is next up in the black car with the Dayglow rollover hoop. And who's the next one up after that? to try and work that one out as well. I think it's Ian Cowley, it must be. Mark Stansfield, problems for Mark Stansfield, who's been right at the sharp end for the whole of the race. That looks like that's some sort of mechanical issue for him. On the exit of Club Corner, he's pulled the car right the way to the very edge of the runoff tarmac and as close to the gravel trap as he can, hops out of the car, will run through the gravel trap to safety, but that's some sort of mechanical issue for him. I did see the car a little bit further back from where it ought to have been. He was still in third, coming up towards Club, but clearly he knew something was wrong just as he was heading into the corner and parked it towards the exit of it. So it's now just 2 for the lead of the race. Anthony Barnes leading the way, and Lewis Tootle is in second place, and these two have enough of a gap now, I would say, to be able to make sure that they can just fight it out between themselves. So over the start-finish line they'll go, 10 laps completed. There is fluid coming from the back of, from the front of one of the cars, and that is that. Can't quite see. Oh, it's number 3. Who that was, so that looks as though that's Sam May that's out of the race. He's clearly had some contact, I would have thought, somewhere, because the nose cone is dislodged. There's fluid going onto the circuit, which will be coolant. There's a wheel arch hanging off. The nose cone's at 45 degrees, so he is out of the race as well, Sam May. A couple of minutes to go, so they should be on their penultimate lap this time through. And for Anthony Barnes and Lewis Tootle, they could just afford to work. And there's been a coming together for the lead of the 310Rs. David Yates has got tangled up. It looks as though there was a spin there for Paul Setti as well. So that means that Harry Eyre now leads the 310s, and that'll be James Wingfield that's through to second in the 310s. Not quite sure what happened there. We only caught the tail end of it whilst David Yates was trying to recover. There's a spin also, which may well be on coolant, that's been deposited for Matt Drew. So that may well have been from Sam May's car, because it was up at that top section of the circuit where Sam May had his problems, and I think that spin was up at Stowe just before we saw Sam May retire, and that spin was up at Stowe for Matt Drew. So anybody else heading up towards Stowe, it'll be the first time they've reached that part of the circuit with the coolant down there. So the change of surface flags, I'm sure, being displayed by the marshals, and the light boards as well. Of course, around at Silverstone, the light boards always take precedence over the flags at this circuit, and our race leaders have safely negotiated that, with still Anthony Barnes leading the way, Lewis Tootle in second. Remember, we're going to have, either way, doesn't matter what happens, we're going to have a new winner for the first time this season today in the 420s, because Lee Wiggins, who's claimed 3 wins, is not in the entry list. Phil Jenkins, who's claimed 3 wins, is not in the entry list. So for Anthony Barnes and Lewis Tootle, unless they trip over each other, surely it's one of those two that would win it. For third now, it looks as though it's Rob Watts that's through into third position. Bits of Caterham bodywork lying slap bang in the middle of Brooklands. Drivers either head to the left of it or head to the right of it, but the wheel arch sits firmly on the racing line at the moment, as over the start-finish line shortly will come the race leaders to start the final lap. Who's going to finish on the final step of the podium is up for debate, because it's Rob Watts from Gary Tootle and then Luke Bennett that are third, fourth and fifth at the moment. And I think there was a gesticulation there from Rob Watts. Come on, let's work together. Let's see if we can catch them, because we are on to the final lap of the race. Or by the look of things, I think the checkered flag has come out early. It has, yet there was still time on the clock for an extra lap. But I suspect with a mixture of, cars, right, there we go, that's the reason. Slap bang in the middle of the circuit. The car that spun did not get going again, Matt Drew. So rather than go safety car and finish under safety car, there was still a few seconds on the clock. The checkered flag was put out at the end of that lap. So Anthony Barnes claims his first win of the Macmillan 7 Racing UK Championship for 2024. Had to work for it as well, because he was always under pressure, largely from Mark Stansfield and Lewis Tootle, because they got the break nice and early on before Mark Stansfield fell by the wayside. Lewis Tootle will come through in second, and third is going to be Rob Watts, that finished in third place, and that was hard fought for him, because he was having to fend off the aspirations of Gary Tootle and Luke Bennett, and then also the number 124 car of Ben Winrow, who came from 14th on the grid to finish in 6th place, so he had a chunk of overtaking to do. So that's the first few positions in the 420s, and with that shake-up in the 310s when there was that contact that we saw down at Brooklands with David Yates and Paul Setti, it looks as though the win in the 310s is going to go the way of James Wingfield, which will mean that he has now scored more wins than anybody else. That's his third win in the 310s in 2024. So he will be very pleased with that. He was lying third in the championship standings coming into this weekend after a poor Donington Park last time out, where he only scored a single point. So that's back to the kind of form that we expect from James Wingfield. 2 wins, but add that one that he's just done, that makes it 3. He's had 3 seconds, so whilst he's not quite in the championship reckoning, remember, of all of the races, the 11 races that you have, you drop your worst 2. So James Wingfield will absolutely be back in the championship reckoning once we take dropped scores into account. So the cars, I think, have largely all now taken the checkered flag. We can still see Matt Drew's car stricken up there at Stowe Corner, slap bang in the middle of the circuit. I said I thought it was a spin on coolant. Well, if he did spin on coolant, then maybe the heat soak meant he couldn't get the engine fired back up again, or possibly it was a mechanical issue that caused the spin, cause or effect. Simply don't know, but hopefully all of those cars that were damaged we'll see back out. I do have some concerns as to whether we'll see Michael Riley and Doug Christie's cars back out, but let's confirm the results for you. For round 8 of the 2024 Macmillan 7 Racing UK Championship, Anthony Barnes claims the win. The graphic popped up and then disappeared. I'm sure we'll get it back in a moment. Anthony Barnes claims the win, and it is Lewis Tootle who's there in 2nd place, with Rob Watts completing the top 3. Gary Tootle was 4th, ahead of Luke Bennett, who was there in 5th place, and Ben Winrow claimed 6th place. 7th place was Adam White. It was Tom Heyman Joyce who was there in 8th place, ahead of Stuart Calder, who was next up, and then it was number 23 of Tom Greensall that completed the top 10. In 11th place, he qualified 5th. Ian Cowley didn't make a great deal of progress, did he? Matt Reeve was next up, and then it was the number 222 car of Julian Kari, who came from 21st on the grid to 13th place, and that was a driver that made some good progress ahead of Matt Welsh, and then the car of Richard Broughton. Ian Noble was next up, and then it was the 142 car of Tom Quarrendon that completed the top 17. 18th was the number 59 car of Adrian Fernandez, and then in 19th place, that was the winner of the 310s, which was James Wingfield, as the first of those home. Harry Eyre was next up. He was 2nd in the 310s, and the 310 podium was completed by Mark Roberts. Then it was Oliver Smith. He made very good progress from where he started on the grid, ahead of Rob Good, with David Yates next up, and then the second member of the Winrow family who races in the 310s, which was Jamie Winrow. Then it was Styring. Paul Setti recovered to finish in 27th after his spin. Simon Sharrock was next up, and then it was Steele and Riddington that completed the top 30. There were 50 cars, so we won't go through all of the rest of them, but you can see there the results from 30th through to 40th position. And as we run through the last few finishers, we can see that other cars further down, the likes of number 19, Mark Stansfield, had problems, will still be classified as a finisher, but he did not make the duration of it. And then, of course, we have those cars that all brought about that safety car period: Michael O'Reilly, Greg Hyatt and Doug Christie, with work to do for the teams to get them back out for round 9 of the championship. We'll bring that to you around about 3:55 this afternoon. So from Silverstone, for the moment, it's goodbye.